A jack of all trades is a master of none. For a long time, I heard that as more than just a saying. I heard that as a warning, as a verdict. Because frankly, in high school, being interested in a lot of things is only acceptable up until a certain point. After that, people ask you to narrow it down. They ask you to decide, what is your specialty? What are you good at? I mean, I've always hated that question, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because frankly, I didn't know. And I know while a lot of people have good intent, this message was clear. Pick something, stick with it, make it make sense, and do it early. The earlier, the better. I think this became the clearest to me during course selection just last year in freshman year. I was struggling to make a decision that should have been really easy for me. Let me lay it out for you. I love film. Not because I want to become a filmmaker when I grow up, but because it's something that comes to me naturally. I love using film as a way to observe, to think, and create. However, when it came time to decide whether I wanted to take film this year, I actually found myself in a really tough spot. Not because I stopped loving film, but because I started comparing it to something like AP Computer Science. Something with a big name, something with a big brand, something that was probably easier to explain to others. And that's when I realized I wasn't asking the question, what do I genuinely love anymore? I was asking, what looks more credible? That's when I discovered there were two versions of myself. There was one version, clear, focused with a good sense of direction. And then there was the real version, the one that combined science, history, film, music, English, math, something that was harder to explain to someone because the connections weren't on the surface. And a lot of times, unfortunately, that real version would often be left out of the conversation. Somewhere along the way, I began to edit that real version of myself. I began to leave out things, to only mention the things that I thought would make it easy to understand, to only mention the things that would shape myself into someone that looked focused. And the craziest part is that I didn't even notice I was doing it. Looking back, I never dropped film, and I'm so glad I didn't. But what I really took away from that experience was that I had even started to think like that in the first place. Once I noticed it there, I started to notice it everywhere. Now, it's important to say that before high school, none of this was really a problem. Science taught me about the world. Film and music taught me about rhythm, emotion, and how ideas could be expressed creatively. Like English taught me about literature. All of these things seemed connected to me in their own right. That was never a problem until then. And that's exactly what real curiosity is. It's the power to be interested in so many different things without worrying where it all connects. And so what I realized was it wasn't my curiosity that was changing. It was my environment. This is what I like to call performative well-roundedness. See, in theory, being well-rounded is being open and being curious. But oftentimes in schools or in applications, we lose that sense of authenticity. We often start to just do things for the sake of doing things. And this variety eventually loses its origin and just returns to, hence the name, performance. Curiosity becomes strategy. Slowly, I realized that it was this pressure that could kill my curiosity silently, not once, but little by little over time. My parents grew up in India. They had two paths. Essentially, it was choose A, B, and C and stick with it for the rest of your life. And for the longest time, I thought the system here was different. And don't get me wrong, a lot of it still is. But what I did come to realize while paying attention to their stories more closely was that this pressure to choose didn't just disappear. It merely changed shape. Instead of being told what to choose, we're still forced to choose and act like we knew what we were doing this entire time. One system picks for you. The other system makes you pick. Either way, you're forced to be narrowed down before your curiosity has the opportunity to grow. Students are often being told opposite things. Explore, but remain consistent. Be authentic, but also be strategic. Follow all your interests, but somehow make it lead back to something that the world finds meaningful. And unfortunately, they eventually grow to be something just so that they can feel accepted by the world. However, the world does not reward the neat certainty and performance that students are being trained to do right now. They actually reward people who can adapt, people who are smart across fields, people who can make those connections across boundaries. In fact, the US Bureau of Labor states that an average worker doesn't stay in the same job for more than 4 years. That's the same time as high school. See, I'm not saying that depth doesn't matter. I think specialists are rewarded in their own right. But what I have come to realize is that depth matters only when it is put upon broad curiosity. It gives students more opportunities to think freely and to branch out and figure out what they really want to do. And to be honest, I didn't fully understand this until I decided to pursue a project in India. I made a documentary connecting noise pollution. Now, it's important to note that this was not just a film project, and this was not just a science project. This was both. It was about noise pollution in India, and I measured decibels, I interviewed residents, vendors, ENT specialists, but the biggest thing that I began to realize as I went along is that it wasn't about the numbers. It was about the faces. What I learned through that project was that film and science could both communicate a much stronger message than film or science could alone. I learned about observation and communication and seeing how these people are adapting to a problem that they might not even realize is embedded in their city and culture and lives. And so from that experience, I was able to take away that it's not just important to figure out what you're doing. It's important to figure out the thread between everything you're doing. For me, that was observation, communication, and understanding how people and systems worked. This thread helped me figure out this thread helped me see that my interests weren't as scattered as they might have been. Because while labels might explain you to someone else, this thread can help explain you to yourself. Now, I think the most important part is that you don't rush students to put themselves into one box. A lot of students need time. They need place to think, and they need opportunities and exposure. And if you rush students, yes, you might get cleaner stories, but you will also get smaller ones. And that brings me back to the quote I mentioned in the beginning. A jack of all trades is a master of none. But that's actually not the full quote. See, the full quote is, a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes still better than a master of one. It's important to realize that society will not reward a linear path. It'll reward someone who's willing to take risks and go across boundaries. And a lot of times what adults tend to overlook is that not knowing is not confusion. It might just be the stage before a big idea forms. What might look unfocused from the outside, what might look like stumbling around in the dark, might just actually be searching for a source of light. And so, the next time you feel inclined to ask someone, what do you want to be when you grow up? Try asking instead, what are all the things you're curious about right now? Because that question is still changing things for me. Thank you.